Thank you, everybody. We're back online and audio is now live. So we will go back to where we left off at 13.1. So thank you, Sarah. Executive Services, amendment to the schedule of council meetings. Sorry, 13.1, the council plan measures and projects update.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to present the Q4 update for both our progress against council plan measures and projects. So this is a standing report provided to council every quarter to show how we're doing against those commitments in the council plan. And the recommendation is that council receives what you will see in 2019 to 20 status report and the council plan measures report for Q4 of the 2019 to 20 financial year. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Since there's no public questions, Ken, are you happy to move that again, 13.1? Yes, thank you, Ken. And Councillor Fuller again as a seconder. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? No, thank you. All those in favour? Thanks, Harv. The motion is carried. 13.2, adoption of government policies. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. This report is presented to adopt the governance policies arising from the introduction of the Local Government Act 2020, following exhibition and request for submissions. And the recommendation is that Council adopts the governance rules, councillor support policy and the Audit and Risk Committee Charter. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Councillor Curry, do you have an addition?
Yes, to line 3, can we add, so if I read it out in full, number 3, adopts the Audit and Risk Committee Charter, attachment 3, with the addition of the following clause. 3.4, insurance and indemnity. Council must indemnify and keep indemnified each member of the committee, exercising any function or power on behalf of Council against all actions or claims, whether arising during or after the term of office or employment of that councillor or other member, in respect of any act or thing done or omitted to be done in good faith in the exercise or purported exercise of any function or power conferred on the committee or member of the committee under this or any other act. Council's insurance policies shall cover members of the committee while engaging in the business of the committee.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Can I have a mover for that, please? Councillor Fitzpatrick and a seconder. Councillor Curry. Would anybody like to talk on that further? No. Councillor Fuller.
Point of order, Mr Mayor. I think Mark's the mover and Ash can be the seconder, but I think Mark has moved it with the addition.
That could be correct. Sorry about that. Are you okay to be that mover then, Mark? Continue that, and Councillor Fitzpatrick as the seconder. Thank you. So if there's no questions, I'll put the motion then to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. 13.3, Sarah, establishment of an Audit and Risk Committee.
Thank you. So this continues from the previous item, this report is presented to the Council to now establish an Audit and Risk Committee under the Local Government Act 2020 and replaces the Audit Advisory Committee, which was under the Local Government Act 1989. The recommendation is quite lengthy and on the screen, and there is a request to councillors there for a slight amendment to point 2 to incorporate the changes just adopted in the previous item. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll hand back over to Councillor Curry for 13.3 with your addition, please, Mark.
So what we'd like to propose is that line 2, point 2, reads in full, the purpose of the Audit and Risk Committee are those set out in the Audit and Risk Committee Charter adopted by Council under Agenda Item 13.2 at the 25th of August 2020 Council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. So I'll take that as you moving, and can I have a seconder then? Councillor Fitzpatrick again. Councillor Clark, would you like to talk on that? Oh, sorry. Councillor Curry, would you like to talk anything on that? Councillor Clark.
Mr Mayor, my concern with this is that we presently have three independent members of the Audit Committee, they become members of the Audit and Risk Committee. I just believe that they're not compensated sufficiently for work to attendance and reading to do with this Audit and Risk Committee. It's a very onerous job, and even as a councillor, you know, the length of time that you've got to spend just reading the documentation takes you hours, and most times the minutes are about, the agenda is about 350 to 400 pages. And I just think that this council need to look at the recompense that we pay to these independent members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Do you think we should enrol them in a speed reading course?
I didn't catch what you said.
Do you think we should enrol them in a speed reading course?
I think that we need to somehow try and reduce the size and the waste of paper with the audit reports.
Rightio, thank you. Thank you for that. Would anybody else like to talk on this audit committee there? Thank you, Councillor Clark, for your notes and noted. Are all those in favour of the recommendation? The motion is carried. Thank you, Sarah. 13.4 with our loan borrowings 2021.
Thank you. I'm just flipping back to the item on the agenda. So 13.4, loan borrowings 2021. This report is presented to Council. It's somewhat of an administrative process in order to allow the CEO and Mayor to execute the planned borrowings from this year's budget, and also to award the tender for those borrowings. So this recommendation concerns awarding the contract for the initial $11,291,662 of planned borrowings for the 2020-21 financial year as per our budget, and the tenders were received following publication of the council agenda papers. So I can confirm the recommendation is for the loan tender to be awarded to National Australia Bank. The rest of the recommendation is on the screen, and again, due to the administrative process of the recommended bank, there is a request for a slight amendment there to point 3 of the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll now hand to Deputy Mayor Councillor Fuller on 13.4 with that slight amendment. Could you read the whole amendment there of 13.4, please, David, and clause 3?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to add this so that it reads, authorises the Mayor and the Chief Executive Officer to execute any necessary loan documentation, sign and seal if necessary, to facilitate the loan amount of $11,291,662 for the ongoing implementation of the Council Works projects detailed in the 2020-21 budget on behalf of Council.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. There's no questions from the gallery. So can I have a mover, please, for that, Councillor Fuller, and a seconder, please, Councillor Fitzpatrick. Would any councillor like to talk on the recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Clark.
Mr. Mayor, I'm still concerned about the borrowings for this financial year and the repayments that we're going to have to make just on this loan alone. It's a 10-year loan, but this council have tried to do a lot of capital works, but I think that the time has come when we should be reducing our capital works programs. And I think that there's 2 items that are mentioned there on page 20 of the agenda, the regional play space and the Mitchell Avenue Children's Garden. We've spent so much money in Mitchell Avenue, and we continue to do so. But I think that the regional play space is something that we've got to put $1 million towards, and I think that should be spending that $1 million somewhere else. So I'll be opposing the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Curry.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I was actually just curious to understand as to why we needed to add the wording mayor to that particular line. I don't understand from a strategic point of view what we need to be doing, I guess, adding, I don't know, the councillors to sign anything. I'm just curious to understand what the real realm is for that.
Through the chair, it's just a requirement of this particular bank that the documentation is signed by both the mayor and CEO, so it's just to comply with their requirement.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Anybody else like to talk with this recommendation? Okay, I'll put the recommendation to a vote. All those in favour, please raise their hand. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. It's for and against. Councillor Clark. Thank you. Noted. The motion is carried. Thank you, Sarah. We'll now move to number 15.1. Oh, sorry.
So if I just confirm the value of the award.
Oh, sorry. Yes, the value for that.
Yep, so just to confirm, so the quote from National Australia Bank as at Friday, the 21st of August, was a rate of 1.68% and a quarterly payment of $307,282. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll move on to item 15. Thanks, Alan Clark. 15.1.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
I'm sorry, Jamie. I'm getting ahead of myself. I've crossed that out for some reason. Thank you. 14.1, community wellbeing. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you. So this report is presented to Council similar to some of the other reports around corporate services in reflection of some of the changes that are required as part of the new Local Government Act 2020. So this first report is presented to reflect some of the changes in terms of terminology and administration for a number of our committees of management. This report reflects the changes for movement from some of our Section 86 committees to now be called Community Asset Committees, and there's some changes in terms of how they are administered and how they work with Council to reflect that. So the recommendation is up there for the screen. It's also quite long and wordy. It also does reflect the decision that has been made by the Friends of Lacluda Special Committee for them to no longer be what was previously termed a Section 86 committee, and instead they will become a separate entity from Council. So.
Thank you, Jamie. There's no questions from the gallery on that. So can I have a mover, please? Councillor Fuller, and a seconder, Councillor Councillor Benton. Would anybody like to talk on the motion? No, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Thank you. The motion is carried. Thank you, Jamie. 14.2.
Draft community engagement policy is before Council for consideration, again to reflect the changes that have been put in place as part of the new Local Government Act. We have already had a community engagement policy in place here at Council for a period of almost a year. This change that is before Council reflects the changes in the Act and also reflects the changes that Council will make in terms of incorporation of community engagement to our most strategic documents and across decision making for the organisation and Council laws. The recommendation before Council is that we put the draft community engagement policy back out for community exhibition until the 25th of September. And if submissions are received, that Council convenes a special Council meeting to hear from persons who would like to make a written submission. And if no submissions requiring any change, that Council resolves to adopt the new community engagement policy without further resolution.
Thank you. No questions from the gallery again, so can I have a mover, please? Councillor Fuller and Councillor Curry. Would anybody like to talk on this motion? Councillor Fuller.
If ever there was a document that required the community to read and to participate, this is the one. It's the one that we actually use as a guiding document as to how we interact with you. So I implore the community to have a read, to put forward some ideas and to bring it to the attention so that we can have an overall conversation with everyone. Thank you.
Councillor Curry.
I'd just like to agree with everything that Councillor Fuller has just said. In the last almost 4 years, one of the biggest, I guess, complaints has been that we don't communicate with the community enough. This is the document that we will live and breathe by, and if we don't get the community involvement with this, then it's a little bit hypocritical of the community to say that we don't actually engage with them correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. No one else like to speak? Dave, you don't need to finish off. I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The recommendation is carried. Dave.
Mr Mayor, as previously stated, I'd like to declare a conflict of interest with item 14.3 in regards to this recommendation on the basis of the fact that come the festival I will no longer potentially be sitting as a member of council, and therefore I'm leaving the room for this conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Fuller. We'll call you back. Jamie, thank you. 14.3.
So this report's presented to Council for consideration of the contribution that Council makes to the Wangaratta Festival of Jazz and Blues. Council has a very long relationship with the festival and has worked with them right from the beginning of the festival. This year, for all events right across the world, there is obviously a challenge around the hosting of live events given the COVID-19 pandemic and the restrictions that are in place for the provision of events and the number of people who can be in one place at a time. The recommendation before Council tonight reflects the contribution, the financial contribution, but it also talks about the mutual communication strategy that would be in place. One of the elements that Council will continue to work with the festival around is the provision of online or virtual presentation of some elements of the festival where possible, and that will be something that we continue to work with as the requirements for the COVID social restrictions are set and become more evident around what is allowed closer to the life of the festival. So the recommendation before Council is that the contribution of $30,000 be made to the Festival Committee following the successful delivery of the festival. If there is COVID-19 restrictions allowing for excess of 500 people in an event to take place, and that the Wangaratta events are delivered to ensure access to our local community. And that we develop a mutual communication strategy that will address how Council is a partner of the festival and the kind of strategies that are put in place to make sure that the festival delivers for our community.
Thank you, Jamie. There's no questions from the gallery, so can I please have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Clark and Councillor Curry. Thank you. Would anybody like to talk on this recommendation? No. I'll put the recommendation to... Councillor Curry? No. I'll put the recommendation to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Can somebody get Councillor Fuller back? Thanks, Jess. Thank you, Councillor Fuller. Now, thanks, Jamie, and from the Community Wellbeing Department, we'll now move on to item 15.1 through Infrastructure Services. Thank you, Alan Clark.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This report is presented to Council to consider awarding 2 contracts which is necessary for the completion of the rehabilitation of cells 2 and 8 at the landfill. This work is necessary as part of the best practice in our EPA licence. It's 2 separate contracts. One is for the actual construction work, and one is for the geotechnical inspection and testing authority and the construction quality assurance work, both necessary components of this project. It's probably worth noting that part of the recommendation includes allocating some additional funds to this project from the landfill reserve. This has become necessary as when this project was budgeted, we had a stockpile of material that would be used in one of the layers in the rehabilitation, a soil material. That's been used recently in the bushfire waste coming in as cover material. The bushfire waste has brought in about $3.7 million of income, but it has consumed that soil material which we now have to replace. The contract includes a provisional amount which allows for all of that material, but we will be going out to try and source that material from other sources, leading right up to when it's required on site. So it's unlikely we'll require the entire amount in the provisional quantities, but we need it to be there to award the contract and proceed with the project. So the recommendation, won't read it in full, but in short, it's to award the construction contract to Winslow Constructors, to award the JETA contract to PLC Consulting, to allocate the further funds, to authorise the CEO to sign and seal the contracts and to disclose the contract prices. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan Clark. There's no questions from the gallery, so can I have a mover for this recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Bussell, and a seconder, Councillor Benton. Councillor Bussell or Benton, would you like to talk first on this matter? Councillor Bussell, no? Would anybody like to talk on this motion moving forward? No, I'll take that as a no. So I'll put the motion to a vote, or the recommendation to a vote. All those in favour? The recommendation is carried. Alan Clark, would you like to mention the price?
The contract to award to Winslow's for the actual construction work is $2,349,568.11, and the contract to PLC Consulting is $200,868, both excluding GST. Thank you.
Thank you there. Thank you, Alan. I'll now move on to item number 16, Development Services. Stephen Swart for our Planning Scheme Amendment C81.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is about Wangaratta Planning Scheme Amendment C81, which proposes to make changes to the Wangaratta Planning Scheme to implement the recommendations of the Wangaratta Urban Floodways Flood Investigation Study, which Council adopted in 2018. Specific changes proposed by this planning scheme amendment are updating the flood overlay and land subject to inundation overlay maps and associated schedules, and including the flood investigation study in the scheme as a reference document. The planning scheme amendment was publicly exhibited as required by the Planning and Environment Act, and this report is presented to Council to consider the submissions received. It should be noted that since the report was written, an additional objecting submission was received, bringing the total number of submissions to 17, including 14 from landowners and 3 from authorities. The submissions have been considered and details of the assessment of submissions are included in attachment 1. Council officers recommend making changes to the planning scheme amendment in response to submissions, but not all requested changes could be accommodated. It is therefore recommended to refer the amendment and submissions to an independent panel for further consideration.
Thank you, Stephen. There's no questions from the gallery. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Clark, and a seconder. Was that you, Councillor Benton? Thank you. Would anybody like to talk? Councillor Benton, did you want to talk on this, or Councillor Clark first? No. Councillor Benton, did you want to talk? No. Stephen Swart, do you mind if I just ask you a question in relation to this?
Sure.
As part of a talk, with the going to a panel, the panel is likely to be held, so a two-part question here in Wangaratta, and any of the objectors that haven't been satisfied in the report, are they allowed to present at the panel hearing by invitation?
Yes, so panel hearings are generally conducted in the location, so it's likely to be in Wangaratta. All submitters have an opportunity to be heard at the panel, and Council will be in contact with submitters about how that works and how they nominate to be heard at a panel.
Thank you, Stephen, for clearing that one up. Would anybody else like to talk in relation to this report? Councillor Bussell, you're okay? Right, I'll put the motion or the recommendation to a vote. All those in favour? The recommendation is carried. Thank you, Alan Clark. Thank you, Stephen Swart. And thank you, Alan, for before. We'll move on to, there's no 17 special committees report. We'll move on to 18 and 19 and we'll do together, which is the advisory committee reports and the record of assemblies of councillors. Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you, Mayor. 19.1 is records of assemblies of councillors and advisory committee reports from a series of meetings during July and August. Recommendation that council receives and notes those reports.
Thank you. There's no questions. I have a mover, please, Councillor Fitzpatrick and Councillor Curry. If no one wants to talk on, I'll put the recommendation to the vote. All those in favour? Carrying? Yes, the motion is carried. Thank you. Of motion. So we'll move on to urgent business item number 21, of which we'll have to be quiet. Thank you, Jess. In this meeting, a few mistakes, so sorry about that, everybody. So there is a public question, a lady by the name of Cassandra Pollock, and I will read it aloud, and councillor to come in with an answer if they want, and I will as well. During the Victorian local government elections, it was normal practice for the rural city of Wangaratta to conduct a democratic process by making resources such as the Performing Arts Centre available for question and answer forums. Such events have been available by which residents have been able to find out information about the who have nominated as candidates. Nature are unlikely to be possible during the pandemic. I understand it was a state government decision to schedule the elections for the end of October. I asked both the council and the CEO this question: what publicity and or practical support can the rural provide to new candidates in the Wangaratta Council election? When answering that there is a proportion of citizens who are not online and their homes, and of those who are online, there is a segment of residents who do not of social media. And B, currently have a council that achieves gender parity. Cassandra, in respond.
What was the last sentence?
Sorry,
Yeah.
the last item B, that council do not a council that is remotely achieved gender parity of on council than women. Response from the start is run by the Victorian Electoral Commission, which you'll see advertised. Do this by law. They make communications and advertising paper, including a recent candidates, media release and information. They have also book for candidates. Despite not being responsible for the election, we're promoting the election candidacy via our website, links to information provided by those for the various official aspects. Thank you to the VEC and voter information and profile page, the Administration of Victoria Stand for Council, the local government Victoria website, the local Victoria Safe Campaign guidelines, the local government candidate training for candidates resource. Information for candidates resource. In terms of how we are supporting the election, how can we? Anyone not online can contact us to get access to the council offices, candidate training and research. We can also assist vision of paper copies if needed. We have advertised in the paper and do that together with issuing an election media releases, news articles to the official material on our website and not join our and just on our social media. Also done advertising around the stand and from this Friday advertising the mandatory training. The MA website has excellent materials and councillors do well as a wealth of information for council. On gender parity, this the MAV stand for council, the dedicated page on equality and diversity in council getting more involved than this because that perceptions that the may favour some candidates to seek influence the election could. This is particularly in respect of current council. As a result, we have to operate from this process. Thank you, Cassandra. And I would imagine that all councillors here, if elected, their mobile phones, which are advertised in the paper, if you need a current councillor. Thank you. Would anybody else like to? Fitzpatrick.
Thanks, Cassandra, for asking that question. There is on the have a campaign calling Tapper on the Shoulder. Pages and community pages wanting to run for local government. Me, strong advocate for women running for elections. This is we individually have to run and become a candidate, and it's then the community support us to be elected. You know, we do need and cultures and groups around this table. It is extreme, but as us as individuals, we all and putting up our hand. Please, I do encourage you to. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fitzpatrick. To talk on this public question? No. Thank you, Cassandra. That's all. Times. I'll now 20.
Mr. Mayor,
sorry.
Question.
Yes, please.
CEO through the.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Please. Go. Organisation is, please.
On the spot.
Those.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I numbers. Team is obviously 2 males and 2. Our management group presented and fairly even by both genders. When we look at the broader organisation, in fact, a greater number in actual numbers. I can't tell you what full-time, part-time off the top of my head, but in proportion of females than.
Thank you, Councillor. Public question time is finished. 23 points. Confidential business. We'll be moving to put for the conclusion online and being back with you meeting. Yes. To move Councillor Bus. It's Patrick. All those in favour. Motion is carried.